The BAT, the border adjustment tax, that was obviously in the House plan. It's not in your plan. Does this need to be budget neutral? In other words, you know, maybe it's not revenue neutral in the tax plan, but will we see another border adjustment type, you know, tax in the trade economic policy that you're coming out with? Will we see a reciprocal tax or an import tax to raise revenue from that lost, what is it, $1.2 trillion lost from the BAT?
Well, let me just say, there's lots of different ways that we can look up making up that revenue. We're doing that. But as it regards to the trade policies, the president made it very clear that he believes in free and fair trade. And what that means is, if we don't charge you any tariffs, you shouldn't charge us any tariffs. If we don't charge you a tax on bringing things in, you shouldn't charge us a tax. So the president has talked about a reciprocal tax, and that's one of the many things we're looking at. But again, it's about fair trade.
But border adjustment tax off the table?
Again, we've been working with the House committees on this, and what we said to Chairman Brady is, in its current form, it doesn't work, that we have a lot of concerns about it, although there's aspects that we like, and we'll continue to have those discussions if he wants to make changes to it. But this is about, ultimately, when we come out with a plan, and we're working very closely with the House and Senate, is something that the three of us agree on, that can get passed and get to the president's desk as quick as we can for him to sign, so that we can create economic growth and jobs, jobs, jobs for the American people.
Are you expecting this package to move through reconciliation or through getting 60 votes?
You know, I'd like to think that we can do this on a bipartisan basis, and I hope there are Democrats who cross the aisle and support this. So this is about a middle-income tax cut. It's about making businesses competitive, and those are things that they believe in, so I would hope so. But if they don't, we will absolutely consider using reconciliation, because we need to create this economic plan to create the growth that we need. As you know, the GDP numbers came out last week, way too low. We can't continue with the economic policies of the last administration. We need to create jobs and economic growth.
0.7% growth for the first quarter was really underwhelming. And you think the tax plan will move the needle on growth?
I do. I think tax regulation and trade, we believe we can get to 3% sustained economic growth. That's going to take us some time, but that's our objective, and that's what we believe we can get to. And that creates lots of opportunities for Americans.
So if you do have 60 votes and you move this through the regular process, and some senators push back on no border adjustment tax, an expensive plan, perhaps they'll call it, the Committee for a Responsible Budget said that this could cost between $3 and $7 trillion. Does that sound right to you?
Well, I'm not sure how they can possibly have scored it, since we haven't come out with all the details, and the Tax Foundation and others has specifically not scored it because they said they don't have the details. So again, when we come out with the details, which we're working on, we expect this will be paid for with both economic growth and cutbacks of lots of special interests.
And is there wiggle room, in your view, in terms of those 60 senators, I mean, the 60 votes that you will need if you don't do reconciliation? Where's the wiggle room in terms of offsetting that $1.25 trillion from the border adjustment tax that's not there?
Again, Maria, there's lots of things we're looking at, and, you know, again, we're working closely on this, and we're confident we'll get it done.
Can you give us a sense of the breakdown? You've got three brackets that you've outlined, 10%, 25%, 35%. What are the income levels?
We haven't set the income levels yet, but we're working on, and we've scored lots of different scenarios, and we're going to make sure that they're fair, and that when we do it, again, that we have a middle-income tax cut. That is the president's priority.
Secretary, let me ask you about Fannie and Freddie, because you've talked a lot about the need for these two housing giants to be privatized. Where is that in your priority list?
Again, I haven't said they would be privatized. What I've said is I'm committed to housing reform, and that we're committed not to leave them as is for the next 4 years. So we want to make sure that there's ample credit for housing. It's a very, very important part of the economy, but we also want to make sure that we don't put the taxpayers at risk. And as you know, right now, those two companies only exist because we have a giant line from the Treasury that support them.
There's a conversation going on Twitter, and it has been for a long time, about how President Obama needed money for Obamacare and would take from all of the agencies, and he took from Fannie and Freddie. Is that true?
It is true. They used the profits of Fannie and Freddie to pay for other parts of the government while they kept taxpayers at risk.
And also, I understand that Fannie and Freddie were not they were exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. Just last week, I understand the bill that Kevin McCarthy was pushing through is about taking them out of being exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. So people didn't even know that money was being taken from Fannie and Freddie.
Well, I'm not going to comment on the legal aspects of that, but we're committed to having housing reform, and that's one of the many things that I'll be working on.
What do you think is going to be more powerful in terms of growth, stimulating growth? Is it the 15% corporate tax or the business tax, as you said, or is it the individual?
I think it's both. I think the middle income tax cut will be very impactful to the economy, but I also think the business tax cut will be huge. And we expect that companies will bring trillions of dollars back onshore to reinvest. It's not a surprise that U.S. companies have left money offshore, given how uncompetitive our rates are.
That tax, in terms of bringing money over, from overseas back to the U.S., the president told me a couple of weeks ago he's thinking it's $5 trillion.
He does.
That's sitting overseas. So if you bring that money back, is it a 10% tax? Is it an 8% tax? What's the number?
Again, you're close to the numbers. I'm not going to say the exact number, but you know, it's something that we're going to look at that's going to be competitive. The companies will pay as a one-time tax to change to a territorial system, and we're comfortable that that will bring back trillions of dollars offshore.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary, actually, all the money that has not come back because people feel that they're getting taxed twice.
They are. They don't want to pay the tax, so that's why they don't bring it back.